Hello, today I'm starting a new series on Jupiter through the houses. So I'm going to go through Jupiter's, because obviously it's the most benevolent of all planets. So I'm going to go through all the indications just so that we can learn a little bit more about it. And then we go through for the different ascendants. And so Jupiter is obviously Jiva Karaka, the very first thing, and that is the planet of vitality and life, basically. So it's the most benefic of all planets, and the ruler of the natural ninth and 12th house of the zodiac. So Sagittarius and Pisces are ruled by Jupiter. They're completely different there in their feeling. Jupiter in the ninth house will be more for pilgrimage, education, higher education, doctorates, master's degrees, justice, law, culture. It's a trinal house, and it's all those kind of Sagittarius, much more focused, much more preaching, religious, knowledgeable, and high wisdom. In Pisces, it's much more optimistic, much more letting go, much more to do with the vision of the bigger picture, making things very spiritual, and travel. Both of them actually has of travel, both ninth and 12th house. Ninth house is obviously more like pilgrimage, where you go and come back. So you might go either for religious reasons or for education when it's activated, and you will return home. And so let's have a look at the kind of things to do with that. It's obviously a planet of morals, courtesy, and devotion. And it's open-minded, spiritual. And Jupiter is also the significator of natural houses, second house, fifth, ninth and 11th house of the zodiac. So by that I mean that it rules house of family, wealth, values, opportunities, children, obviously, with fifth house and everything, luck, happiness, growth, education, travel, and knowledge. It's the significator of teachers and role models that we attract. People who guide us through life and help us to actually put us on our path, our dharma, and give us knowledge and higher knowledge. It's also the significator of children, which is our most creative part of a human being, and is obviously creations and being creative, and all of that is very massive part of human life, really. It's also like when we got a really good fifth house, all things to do with the fifth house are really magical to us. It's so creative, and it's so willing to be self-sacrificing and devotional towards our child. It's very romantic. It's really rules like the physical heart, like Leo, that kind of thing. So it's just pretty outstanding, really. And they are like our biggest blessings of life, and our commitments to them is highly vibrational in the biggest scheme of things. So the energy we put into them help us increase the strength of our fifth house. It's also the significator of husband material. So a woman can be, or a man can, attraction will be like Mars. Obviously Venus for heterosexuals, the more gay couples Mars is still the attraction. But Mars obviously what we'll be attracted to, but Jupiter will be the husband material. So it's very different when a woman chooses to set up home with somebody than somebody who is just like looking good, just like thinking, are they going to be reliable when I have be set up home and have children. So Jupiter will, a really good Jupiter in somebody's female's chart will indicate that they want to have a partner for life, so they can bring and support their child, be very committed to the family. Jupiter rules the northeast of properties, generally speaking, in Vastu, and it's the condition of the chart. It shows the optimism and happiness of the person. So whether or not somebody can look at their situation like glass half full or glass half empty, and that's how their approach to life is really. So, but the good thing is, obviously, even if you have got a difficult Jupiter in your chart, with transits, we always get, even if it's not a good planet for you, I think it's much more blissful when it's in transit. And also with different dashas, it kind of really helps to activate that that Jupiter for the better. Excuse me, they're just checking my internet. So obviously the planet of opportunities, wherever it goes in the chart, you have that premise there of opportunities and situations occurring that the Jupiter will help you achieve, so you can tap into that. Jupiter is friendly with the Sun, Moon, Mars and Ketu. It's enemies with Mercury and Venus, and neutral towards Saturn. It spends roughly about a year in any sign, but it does retrograde back too during that time. But generally speaking, it takes 12 years to go around your chart, so 12-year cycle. So when you have a Jupiter return, that is 12 years have gone by. And it's a sign that allows you to explore the indications of the house and gives you opportunities, with its transits. It's exalted in Cancer at 5 degrees, the home of family, early education, nurture and stability, and love of homeland. It's debilitated at 5 degrees of Capricorn, which is sign of strive, climbing the ladder, ambition, government structure, and wanting more and more. And Motrikona is Sagittarius, 0 to 10 degrees in Mula Nakshatra, where you get to the bottom of things, build yourself a really firm foundation, and then build on that. That's what really Jupiter is best at, really. Just like, it's not a credit card, it is to do with wealth, but it's not a credit card type of wealth. It's not like Rahu. It's a type of money that gives you pleasure. So it's not necessarily always like extravagant in that sense. It's very much like build really good foundations and then have the focus, and having focus for that because of Sagittarius. Jupiter is a planet that gives you the big picture, philosophy, travel, culture and luck, happiness and wisdom, religion and spiritualities and other realms, charity. And because it's exalted in the fourth house of the natural zodiac, charity begins at home and a homeland first, and that will make you really happy. And women, especially mothers who are mothering a child, nursing a child. In Sagittarius, as I said, is focused and righteous, preaching and committed to goal-oriented and religious. In Pisces, it's open-minded, big-hearted, creative, more forgiving, bigger picture, and more spiritual rather than religious. Okay, so wherever it's kind of wherever it sits in your chart, it kind of protects that house and protects 7 houses from it by aspect, but it's got special aspects, 5th and 9th house, so a trinal one as well. So 5th house is from it. You also include the house that's sitting in. So if it's in your 1st house, aspects the 5th, 7th and 9th house. Gets directional strength in the 1st house. It's obviously in the, you can imagine it's high consciousness and high awareness spirituality, happy-go-lucky, that kind of thing. It's amazing. It's also, when it's in good condition, it can be really open-minded and tolerant, forward-looking, forward-thinking, positive and optimistic. Makes a fantastic advisor. All of these things that I'm saying, if it's in good condition, helps to move you forward. It kind of rules bankers, financiers, economists, judges, lawyers, generals. What else can I say about it? Spiritual advisors, professors, teachers, those kind of jobs, and justice. And it's also obviously rules justice, law, morals, ethics, universal law, social justice, and also it can be very idealistic and moralistic as well, because it is, you'll find that no planet is 100% brilliant, really, so there's always things going on. It is planet of joy and expansion, so the transit of that can have similar effects. Expansion, particularly if it's in the first house or aspect in the first house. But definitely, it's a first house. So respect and tolerance, affluence is all the other things that you can say about it. It rules fat, liver, high cholesterol, and edema when you actually get water retention. It rules Thursdays, colour yellow or mustard, and it also rules yellowy kind of diamonds and citron gems as well. Obviously it rules Thursdays. It's debilitated, we said, in Capricorn at 5 degrees, but it's also it's not happy in Mercury signs. Mercury and Jupiter together, because they're both planets of teaching, learning, I should say, really, because obviously Jupiter is planet of very much to do with learning and publishing, because of the 9th house. Mercury is very much like information. Mercury can be gossipy, and fast information. But whereas like Jupiter is more like wisdom and high knowledge, that kind of thing. So this is the reason why it feels a little bit nervous in those sort of, it can be a little bit like, because obviously it expands everything, and Mercury can be very sort of multi-talented. It can like give you too much of everything, so it can be a little bit exhausting. So that's why it creates problems when it's in Mercury and nakshatras, Mercury signs, being aspected with Mercury or conjunct with Mercury, because it's just like so much information, whereas like the focus goes out of Jupiter and becomes too much into everything. And obviously because it's a planet of judgment as well, so it can be a bit judgmental about those things. So I find that, like if you it almost creates problems with learning, actually. So like for example, Jupiter in Purva Bhadrapada can be like it finds it really difficult sometimes learning, but but it could be that it's much more of like a visual learner rather than theoretical, because it kind of overdoes things, and the person could be like constantly wanting to learn, and particularly in certain nakshatras and things like that, it can really give you that like, oh, I want to learn so much, but you don't really absorb the information. It's just about going through it, but not necessarily absorbing the information or application of the information. Obviously not friendly with Libra, because they're both planets benefics, but Jupiter is much more like discerning. It's kind of what it is actually. Jupiter is much more it's a little bit judgmental, whereas Venus is not judgmental. It's a teacher to everybody. It's not going to judge you in a sense that you think, oh, you come from a poor background, you come from, that kind of, your family's got money or anything like that, or maybe your family's religious or atheist. Whereas Jupiter can be a little bit more choosy about who they actually spend their time with. So you can definitely see that. Jupiter and Venus are quite an interesting one as well. So Jupiter, Venus, or Jupiter in Venus houses, it can give dissatisfaction as well, because there's always like, oh, I could, particularly in love, because Venus is planet of love. So with Venus, it can just get like, oh, it can be like, the person could be a really, really nice guy or nice lady, and they're just like, oh no, but they just did that wrong. They could be a little bit like that too. So yeah, it's interesting. So we need to like rein it in a sense. If Jupiter is in the fourth house as well, so it gives you luxurious homes and luxurious cars and things like that, because wherever it is, it's bigger than normal. That's definitely the focus. So these are the things to do with Jupiter. As I said, it's got directional strength in the first house, so it gives the person much more focus, a jovial personality, and fun to be with. I have an uncle of mine. I don't know his chart, but I can bet you bottom dollar that he has got Jupiter in the first house, because he's always struggled with his weight, and he is quite expansive. Midriff region, and he's just very fun to be with. He's just got that lovely, I wouldn't say, because sense of humor is much more to do with Mercury, but it's just the happiness, sharing, and whenever we used to go out, as a family and everything, we would stop more often than normal to eat or drink something, and he wants everybody to have fun. So that is very much Jupiter. And I think I did say, but it does rule, Jupiter rules Thursdays. So Jupiter, obviously, just wanted to say that we all get to have a go at Jupiter in the first house at some point, hopefully, if the dashas line up, Mahadasha's planetary periods occur. And definitely in transits too. So there's this. So, but also have a look at other Vargas or divisional charts. In Vedic astrology, there are plenty of them. And have a look and see what condition your Jupiter is in different Vargas. And obviously, if Jupiter, you're going through a Jupiter dasha or subdasha, but particularly if you're going to the main Mahadasha of Jupiter, you can have a look and see in different Vargas if it is in the ascendant of any of those, because they also get activated with that too. It rules 3 nakshatras, Purnavasu, which is Jupiter nakshatras are always between two signs. So it's between Gemini and the first 3 degrees 20 of Cancer. So last 10 degrees of Gemini, 20 to 30 degrees, and first 3 degrees 20 of Cancer. And then also the last 10 degrees of Libra, and the first 3 degrees 20 of Scorpio. So that's Libra and Scorpio. And then also rules last 10 degrees, and that nakshatra in between Libra and Scorpio is called Vishaka. And then we have also Purva Bhadrapada, which is the last 10 degrees, so 20 degrees to 30 degrees of Aquarius, and first 3 degrees 20 of Pisces. So these are the 3 nakshatras. So with the dasha, those 3 nakshatras will get activated. And so what else do I want to say? Yeah, so just remember that, so we all get a little bit of a go at, during those dashas. And also, just wanted to also say that everything that I'm saying is for a Jupiter that has got, I'm not considering any kind of conjunctions or aspects, just purely the house placements. Right, Jupiter in the 12th house. So Jupiter rules the natural 12th house of the zodiac, which is Pisces. So this could be quite a comfortable position for Jupiter, but obviously it depends on the ascendant. And I'm just going to go through the indications of the 12th house, because obviously this is going to also activate the moksha trines, which is 12th, 4th and 8th house. So although it's nice for spirituality, it can be a little bit difficult in the sense that Jupiter is in the 12th house, and wherever it's aspecting, it's also going to create more of that sort of aspects. 4th house, which is great because it's going to make you happy. It's going to aspect 6th house, which is a difficult house, and also 8th house. So, but let's have a look at 12th house. So 12th house, house of rest. It's a hidden house. It's a secretive house. It's house of how you sleep, the quality of your sleep, bed pleasures, imagination, hidden talents. It's house of faraway lands, ashrams, retreats, spas even can be part of that, travel, spiritualities, other realms, aliens and prisons, hospitals and charities, hidden enemies, detachments, losses, expenses, completions, endings, things that are supernatural, stuff to do with space, laboratories working behind the scenes, end of a cycle, subconscious mind, psychic abilities, mediumships, healers, supernatural stuff, and that kind of thing. So Moksha Trikone, when it's activated by Jupiter, it just obviously what it means is people are less likely to want to have things to do with material stuff. So in a relationship, it can obviously be quite difficult because it will give you more expenses, can give you more losses, that kind of thing, particularly if it's not in good condition. And because it's also it's a hidden house, also activates another hidden house, 8th house. So just if you have this, you need to be just careful with that, because Jupiter just gives you more of those things. So it can give you more expenses, can give you more losses, can give you secret enemies. It can give you more enemies because 6th house too is aspecting that. So this is a definitely one that even if it's in good condition, Jupiter, you really need to be very aware of how you go about using this Jupiter to best abilities. I dare say in early years of life, we're going to have problems with this. And this is going to be very different if your ascendant is strong. If your ascendant is strong, ascendant sign or ascendant lord is strong, then you find that you're going to do quite well, and you work at it quite differently because the person will be quite strong, so you can deal with things to do with these houses. But generally speaking, once you know how to use it, you kind of use it to, you kind of know that your luck could kick in if you go to faraway lands. All of a sudden things can do that. Or it can go the other way. Your luck can change for worse in faraway lands. So once you've done it, you realize, and losses and expenses and things, you learn what things to do and what not to do. And these people, they do really, really well if they have got really good way of looking. If you deal with your daily routines, your nutrition, and be in control of yourself, then you are less likely to cause issues, because 6th house is house of acute diseases, illnesses, like for example you get flu, you get like you get digestive issues, things like that. But once you actually heal yourself and by retracting from the world, that's another thing with 12th house. You kind of think, oh, I'm just going to go home because I don't feel well. So once you do that and you know when to rest, when to how to look after yourself and heal yourself, particularly the more natural you are about it, the better. This could also be that you naturally just work in a hospital environment, in a morgue, in a laboratory, in a prison, in a hospital, that sort of thing. So it could be a medic. So that naturally kind of kicks in that 12th and 6th house. So, and Jupiter rules biology anyway, and those kind of things. So that could just be that your job is to do with this stuff. But nonetheless, though, it could be a person who's working, say, as midwifery, because it also aspects the 4th house, and like it's helping. It could be somebody who helps, maybe it's in gynecology, and also aspects, or a surgeon even because of the 8th house, or a midwife or something like that. So they actually help nursing mums to to get the best advice and things like that. And they could also be in manufacturing too, because obviously being in a factory or something like that, that could also be working behind the scenes. But these people just naturally need peace, and they, I would just say another good way of using this, because 12th house is also your intuition. The more you kind of work on meditating, yoga, and being tapping into your intuition, the better you get to use this placement. Use it with the wisdom of Jupiter will kick in when you allow your mind to be rested and not fighting with it all the time. And they like being at home too, because Jupiter's fifth aspect from there was going to be fourth house. So they could have a home in faraway lands. They could also do a job, that is to do maybe what they do. They get houses that are run down or something, and they work on these houses, they restore them, and they gain money. That's how they make their money. It could also be that there could be a private detective. They could, obviously, all those clairvoyancy jobs. They could also be like somebody who deals with tax. The people who actually confiscate maybe things from people who can't pay off their loans and things like that. But if you have it, you really need to look after your health, because sixth house health issues can be dealt with, but if you don't deal with them properly, they become chronic disease, and then you could be hospitalized because of that. So always have, line up your ducks, as they say. Be always aware that these are the things that can help. They obviously like serving people too, so they could be quite charitable people. They could be very good healers, dealing with Ayurveda, maybe Bach remedy, that kind of thing. Natural things, like being also like nutritionists, give advice, because 8th house helps one really deal with giving really good sound advice, because they research the information really well, and Jupiter gives you the wisdom to do that, and then be able to give the right information to the people. And they could also these people could get messages from above when they are resting, meditating, and all of that. They could really be shamans and things like that. They could literally past life regression, all that kind of thing comes into this. And they could also be very spiritual rather than religious. So they connect to source. These are probably the people who are very aware of what's happening in the world at the moment. So these are the people who can actually have stepped out of the 3D world that most people are in and stepped into the 4D, and maybe they're going to be the starseeds who actually take us forward to the 5D, supporting people out of the 3D world that we're living in. But they can be happy setting up home abroad and have a simple life. But that's what they have to do. They have to do the simple things, because otherwise they can get themselves into debt. And so don't borrow too much money, I would say, unless if you're really, really sure, or if your partner helps helps change the dynamics in your chart. And they could also have wellness centers, healing centers, run like meditation groups, things like that. And they can definitely have money issues if they don't look after it properly. But if your first house and first house ruler are strong, then that's really good. And or if not, if your second house is good, that would be helpful too. But that's just generally about the 12th house. I would just say with this, make sure you always complete things, that you really be aware of your daily routine, look after yourself, and be one of those people who is really punctual, gets to work, gets a job done, and things like that. When you have that, and things just naturally falls into place. Let's have a look at the ascendants now. Okay, so for Aries ascendant, 9th and 12th house ruler Jupiter will be in the 12th house, owns that. So it's a really nice, protects the 12th house. And these people could go abroad to do their education. 9th house ruler in the, and they are quite cultured, quite aware of other people's way of, they're quite happy to blend in with other people, because Jupiter in Pisces is quite gracious towards other nations and things. So they're highly respectful of that. This is a nice setting, but their education can create debts for them. Then for Taurus Ascendant, that Jupiter rules 8th and 11th house. When it's in the 12th house, it's in friendly sign. However, this Jupiter will be like friends could create debts for them, you know, big organizations, elder sibling, things like that could create debts for them. If they don't pay their taxes and things, their insurance, then they could have massive expenses. So they need to be aware of that, also look after that kind of thing. But because Jupiter from their aspects, the 8th house, it kind of protects the 8th house stuff. So they will be, Jupiter aspect in that can kind of bless that a little bit. So they could be, if they're working in a situation where they are, like they're a surgeon, or they, you know, something like that in their job, or a healer, they will have wonderful healing abilities there, and it protects the 8th house. So they could be quite into astrology, really have higher view of life, and it can be quite nice. They could have really charitable friends, and their friends, you know, they could go abroad and meet their friends abroad. But it's certainly, if they have accidents and things, Jupiter blesses that house. So, but you still want to be careful, really. So, but it kind of looks after those. They will be a bit more flexible about like sudden ups and downs in their fortunes, if you like. But that also means that their friend circles they could lose friends, and they could then move on to other groups of friends too. And also 8th house is your in-laws. So your in-laws could be quite religious people, and they could also be quite, there could be something secret about your in-laws too. They could have secret money stashed away, that kind of thing. So you don't actually know what's going on. Then for Gemini Ascendant, Jupiter rules their 7th and 10th house. When it's in the 12th house, then you know that that person is going to have some difficulties in work situation. I would probably say that definitely will be somebody who is always looking for something better, whether it's in relationship or in work, particularly if it's in Mrigasira. Mrigasira is always like looking for the next thing. So I would just say, you know, just be really wise about choosing your partner, because it's your 7th house ruler in the 12th house. So you could meet them abroad, you can meet them at work, but there is something secretive about your partner, or you could meet your partner first and then then you get together. But the job could be that you have to travel abroad for your work. But if it is Mrigasira, just be really careful. Don't really, when you meet your partner, be careful not to get married too early. Really get to know them first and then get married. But definitely it could be somebody whose their work is to do with foreign lands, travel, that kind of thing, you know. And they could also be in law, work in law, something like that. Or they could deal with debts as well, people's debts. Then for Cancer Ascendant, Jupiter rules 6th and 9th house. When it's in the 12th house, Jupiter will not be in good condition. It'll be in Gemini, but it's aspect in the 6th house. So this person could be, their father could be like a loss. They could have arguments with their dad, or their dad wasn't available, their dad lived abroad or worked abroad, that kind of thing. But there's definitely something, you know, they could also have problems with religion. And they're sort of the family religion things can be somebody who just like is not that happy about the family kind of things, and there could be a discord between them and the family due to those kind of things. They could have some debts to do with their education, and some losses because of that too. Then for Leo Ascendant, 5th and 8th house ruler in the 12th house. So this would be Jupiter that is exalted. So this could be somebody who's had problems having children, and then suddenly they could just literally have a child out of the blue. They like go abroad, have a holiday, and suddenly boom, they're pregnant or something. So they could have difficulties having children to begin with, but they get blessed with just at the last minute something can happen and they have their child. And actually Jupiter from there is aspecting the 8th house, protecting that, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so but there could be something also secretive about their child. The child can get them into like expenses and debts and things like that too. But aren't they just worth it? So we just have to persevere with them. We choose to have them, they choose to have us. So there's something that beautiful about that too. Jupiter in the 12th house for Virgo ascendant will be Jupiter in which is 4th and 7th house ruler in the 12th house in Leo. Jupiter will be in a friendly sign. So there could be that they didn't know their mum growing up, or they might have had like a stepmom, or their home was abroad, the family had moved abroad, that kind of thing. They meet their partner being abroad or traveling, that kind of thing. And or their mother could have introduced them to the spouse. But their spouse, from there, obviously Jupiter is aspecting the 4th house, making the person really happy-hearted and protecting the 4th house of mum, properties, land, happiness. So very nice too. Happy about being married, that kind of thing too. Jupiter in the 12th house for Libra ascendant will be Jupiter that is in Virgo. So not very good placement for them. However, it's aspecting the 6th house. This person could be Jupiter rules 3rd and 6th house. So these people could definitely be working in hospitals, in morgues, hospices. They could be a surgeon. They'd be very, very handy and very, spiritual person, that kind of thing. But they definitely could be very good healers, Ayurvedic, very good surgeons, that kind of thing. Jupiter for Scorpio ascendant is 2nd and 5th house ruler. When it's in the 12th house, Jupiter will be in Libra. So not a friendly sign. But could be that, these people are 2nd house ruler in the 12th house. They could just have a lot of expenses. The family can cause losses, expenses, hospitalization can cost them a lot of money. Their savings will be spent. Having a child could also do that for them. Or speculations where they actually invest money in the wrong things can cause a lot of issues for them. So yeah, they just got to be careful with that, because it's like 2nd and 5th house ruler. These 2 houses of education, their education can create a lot of debts and losses for them too. So Jupiter is not in good condition here. So you really want to just be really aware that you don't overstretch yourself. Definitely would not advise these people to be investing in any forms of investments and things unless you're 100% sure. For Sagittarius ascendant, 1st and 4th house, Jupiter in the 12th house will be Jupiter in Scorpio. So Jupiter is in friendly sign and it's also aspecting the 4th house. So they could have a home abroad. It's aspecting that. So they got a happy heart. They're happy-go-lucky people. Their mother is probably quite jovial, a really creative mother. Homely and nice placement, and but it's 1st house ruler in the 12th house, so the person is always on a different dimension. It's highly psychic person. They got to be careful not to create losses for themselves, and just be really careful with that, because it's 1st house ruler in the 12th house. The person is never really they can create their own losses, their own expenses. They've got to learn to just complete things, be a good bit detailed, that kind of thing. Then for Capricorn ascendant, 12th house is Sagittarius. Jupiter rules 3rd and 12th house. So when it's in the 12th house, Jupiter is own sign. So Jupiter there will be somebody who travels abroad for pilgrimages, education. Travel costs them a lot of money because 3rd house is travel, 12th house is, but friends can create losses for them and that kind of thing. But yeah, it is in good condition, but nonetheless though, it's still 12th house rule in the 12th house, and Jupiter there could create a lot of expenses for you, because there could be somebody who's constantly learning but not really applying it. So they constantly have all these expenses and losses. but they need to kind of invest that in better, no points, learning if you're not applying, that kind of thing. For Aquarius ascendant, so this will be the 2nd and 11th house ruler in the 12th house. So this will be somebody again who will find it difficult to save money. They could lose all their gains and their friends also because of the because they just not invest in their money, and their values of the friends that they have is probably not as good as their family ones, so, or they could have expenses because they're family. So this is obviously not a good position, because for them Jupiter will be debilitated, so they've got to be very careful to choose friends, how they choose their friends, how they spend their money in order to and I guess there'd be some lessons to be learnt there, really, in order to, they could be overly optimistic, really, I guess. So for Jupiter in the 12th house, for Pisces ascendant, is the 1st and 10th house ruler in the 12th house. So again, the person will be like 1st house ruler in the 12th house. So you've got to be just, they kind of feel a bit lost, out of sync with themselves. 12th house, it could be that the person just is not really grounded, and they're spending a lot of money, and they just go from job to job in order to just be really, it's obviously not a good placement, but it's, they just got to give it a good go, when they start a job, be committed and go into it. But it could also be somebody who's in litigation, works with prisoners, works with in hospitals, that kind of thing too. But certainly because of they do really well to just like stick at things, have really good daily routines, and their happiness will come through spending time serving others. So this will be a very much like serving other people, so a service job, in healthcare and things like that, will do them good. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Thank you.